And one of the best definitions of sales I ever heard is it's a transference of belief. All comes down to belief. They have a real strong belief in themselves and their process and what they're doing. They have a very strong belief in their product and what they're selling. There's always this idea that, oh, we can't tell them that, or we have to position this and the other thing. And he's like, no, like you can't have trust. You can't serve the customer right if you're not honest with them, right? If I'm pushing a rock up a hill, it's not a good deal. Like, how many times have we done that? Like, I really want this deal really bad, and you're doing all this work and all this unnatural thing, and they're not doing anything. I'm asking them to do stuff. Because if they're not willing to do things in service of whatever it is that we're trying to solve together, the deal's not happening.
What are some of the timeless principles that you've seen that make top performers great, regardless of all the changes that have gone on with AI or, throughout the years? Welcome everyone to the monthly Fireside Chat. And today I'm thrilled to have Mr. Scott Ingram. I've known Scott for at least 5 years. I was co-author of one of his books. I appeared at the Sales Success Summit that he's been hosting it was 3 years in a row, and he's become a good friend over this period. Scott is an enterprise sales professional and founder of Sales Success Media and the Sales Success Stories podcast, where he only interviews top 1% quota-carrying, active, and individual contributors who have been either the number one performer in their orgs or at least in the top 1% if it's a bigger org. Through hundreds of interviews with top performers, Scott has uncovered the timeless principles behind sustained success, building trust, relationships, and authenticity. And he lives all these principles. He continues to prove these out by staying active in the field. He's carrying a quota and he leads by example. And for over a decade, amazing track record, man. He's sold over $3 million a year in marketing technology services. He also hosts the Sales Success Summit. And he was a guest speaker at our mastermind, our second mastermind in Austin, Texas. And honestly, one of the all-time favorite guests I've ever had. And it's been that long since we've had you in the community speaking to everyone. So welcome back, Scott.
Good to be here. Good to be here. The bar's high, so we'll see if we can at least get close to it.
You crushed it last time, so I'm going to be expecting big things from you. Maybe you can share a little context. So this year, I understand, is you're about to celebrate the 10-year anniversary of the podcast, and you've been really pouring into like helping sellers, crack the code to being the number one at their company. Just give us a little context of why you do this. I know you have a family. I know you have your own job. Like, why do Sales Success Media and so much other things on the side?
Yeah, I can't believe we're coming up on 10 years is totally insane to me. And what's funny is, like, I thought other people would have ripped me off by now, right? The reason I created the show, I've always been a student of sales, right? Like, I'm always looking for, there's got to be a better way, there's got to be another gear. And I looked at the content I was consuming and I thought, this is so dumb. Like, why is all of this coming from people who haven't carried a quota in, I don't know, like decades? I'm like, if the last time you closed a deal, it came in via fax, like, I call bullshit. And so it was really, I just wanted to hear from what are the people who are at the top of their game right now in this same market that we're selling into? What are they doing? Not what did people do 10 years ago, which is funny because if you go back to the beginning of the podcast, oh my God, that was 10 years ago. But just this continued evolution. And I knew, at some point, I'll be able to learn how people are finding success in the depths of a recession, because there's always going to be a recession. I did not predict that we would find people who were finding success in the middle of a global pandemic. Okay, well, that's a thing. So it's just wanting to get to the truth, like what's actually happening. Not this is a good idea, or I'm trying to sell a program based on this, so you should hire me for your keynote because I'm talking about these things. Like, no, 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 what's actually generating revenue? So that's what it is. That's what it's been, and it's been an incredible, incredible journey. I can't tell you how much I've learned
You know, it,
through all of these conversations and all these relationships.
well, it resonates because I haven't been in the field now for it'll be coming up on 5 years in March.
Time flies, man.
It's like, wait a minute, is what I still sell, or is these frameworks still relevant? And do they work now? So our whole mission is about showing what people are doing in the community, and we've been doing that with member spotlights and training. Like this is what's working now because I don't want to teach old content. So
Yeah.
it's very real, and I think it's true. And a lot of people, again, if you're a professional coach or trainer, you probably haven't sold B2B tech in a while. So tell me kind of what are some of the timeless principles that you've seen that make top performers great, regardless of all the changes that have gone on with
Yeah.
AI or, throughout the years.
Yeah, I think that the two things for me that just stick out the most and seem to be absolutely timeless is I feel like success, the most successful, it all comes down to belief, right? And belief in multiple dimensions, right? So they have a real strong belief in themselves and their process and what they're doing. They have a very strong belief in their product and what they're selling, right? And one of the best definitions of sales I ever heard is it's a transference of belief.
Mhm.
Well, if you don't really believe, if that's not true and authentic and you believe in your soul, like this is going to positively impact my customer, you can't transfer that belief. Like now you're transferring a lie, right? So that belief component is so important and foundational and fundamental. The other one is stylistically. I mean, I have talked to people of every type, right? Like the most introverted, the most extroverted, everything in between. And everybody has a different way of doing it and finding success. And I think those who lean the most into doing it their way, like that's the unlock, right? Is nobody else can do you, so you should do you. And I actually think that and I'm curious to see if this resonates with people because I feel like especially early in our careers, there is kind of this fake it till you make it thing. And a lot of times what we're faking isn't even a thing that's successful, right? We have this stereotype in our head of, oh, this is what a successful salesperson is, and these are the things I'm supposed to be doing. And so we try and emulate those, and it's completely disingenuous, and it like fails on multiple levels. And it takes you a while to figure out like this really isn't working. And over time, I think you get more and more comfortable in your own skin and go, yeah, I'm weird. There's unique things about me or specific strengths that I have. And
Mhm.
when I leverage those and I lean into those, like that actually seems to work. And so I think most of us got to that place just through a natural process, right? You just had to kind of learn it the hard way, and it probably took years before you went, "Oh, I get it now." And so what I hope that the podcast and these conversations do is help people figure that out that much faster and just kind of shortcut that and lean harder into who am I? Like what are my superpowers, right? What are the strengths and the unique things that I bring that when I'm just myself and it's the other side of the curse of knowledge, right? So what happens is there are things that to us come very naturally and very easily. And because of that, we think they don't have very much value because they're so easy and so natural. But they have a ton of value and they're very hard for other people to achieve. And so when you find those things, and sometimes people are really good at being introspective and figuring those things out. But I think a lot of us have also just had to have conversations with and really explore this with leaders that we've worked with peers that we've worked with customers that we've worked with to help them kind of reflect back and say, Scott, you're really good at this. And a lot of times, because it's so obvious to us, we don't even see it.
So authenticity, being yourself, showing up as your unique self, and
Yeah.
belief or conviction are key. I once heard a quote, you'll appreciate this one. It's not important if customers believe what you're saying. What's more important is that they believe you believe what you're saying.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And
They don't have to, they don't
so
have to believe
so
you.
much of what I've been thinking about lately, it all comes down to trust. And I kind of real time, it was funny, there was a conversation in an episode I did earlier this year where for whatever reason I started kind of dissecting and thinking about this idea. We've heard for years and years and years that, all things being equal, by the way, all things are never equal. People do business with those they know, like, and trust. And as I thought through that, I was like, you know what? I don't think they even have to like you. I think the trust component is so much more important. So again, maybe stylistically, maybe you're being your authentic self, and that doesn't resonate with the person that you're selling to because stylistically or just personality wise, they're different, right? But that trust overcomes that, right? If they believe, you know what, Scott's going to do right by me, even though he's a little bit weird and a little bit quirky and he talks too much or whatever it is, like that is so much more important than the like piece. And I think that's a trap that a lot of that people over time have fallen into. I mean, gosh, it's been a long time since the Challenger Sale came out, but I think that's a wildly misunderstood book, right? And this idea of, oh, the relationship seller is completely the wrong way. Well, I think, yeah, if your goal is I want to be liked, right? And I want to just take people out to dinner and I want to entertain, yeah, that doesn't work.
Mhm.
But you also can't have trust without building some level of relationship,
Makes sense. So how
right?
how do people build trust? What are some of the um, the ways to build genuine trust
Yeah.
and build that relationship to stand out? Because AI now is kind of, I'm not going to say leveling the playing field, but like doing a POV, everyone could probably do that, and sound pretty good, or people can now, you know, uh, I think, um, do things that previously it would take a very disciplined or patient person to do a lot easier and sound like they might have done their research or their homework. What are some of the things that you think are key in the age of AI to really build that trust and relationships when everyone might sound the same?
Yeah, I think so. So I'll say two things. I think truth is the first thing, right? And what's funny is one of the very, very, very early interviews I did was with a guy named Trong Nguyen, and Trong was maybe one of the best of like all these people that I've interviewed. He was number one at Dell. Then he went to Microsoft. He was like outright number one at Microsoft, right? In the enterprise space, opening up entire industries for them, right? He did some of the first like big bank deals and opened up financial services for Microsoft in the cloud. And one of the things, because one of the questions I always ask is, what do you believe that typical salespeople don't? And he says that you tell the truth, right? There's always this idea that, oh, we can't tell them that, or we have to position this and the other thing. And he's like, no, like you can't have trust. You can't serve the customer right if you're not honest with them, right? So that piece coupled with, and to me, this was the biggest, maybe wrong stereotype that I had going into the podcast. And it took me years to really see it for what it was. In fact, when I first did the summit, so the way the summit works, obviously the criteria for the podcast is ridiculous, like number one, top 1%. The only people I put on the stage at the summit are people who've been on the podcast. And when I did the summit the first time, I was afraid that I was going to create this really toxic space because I thought, oh my God, the ego's coming in the door on this. And if they get into this position that we're all trying to one up each other, this is going to get gross really fast. And what I realized was, um, those people are at the top of their game because they're the most humble, and
Mhm.
they were the ones that were like, look, they were the best students in the room. Like, sure, I'm going to speak, but now I'm going to go sit down because there's so much that I can learn from everybody else in this room. And with that, I also had sort of this idea that uh, um, that drive to be number one, to perform the best, meant that they would do really unnatural things, right? And lying being one of them, right? The reality is the best sellers, like being at the top of the leaderboard, having giant W-2s, is more about serving their customers than it is about serving themselves, right? Getting to the top of the leaderboard and getting those types of results are an outcome of having done right by your customers. So that's really the piece, is like the way I always approach it is my number one goal is to make sure that I'm taking care of my customer. What do they need? And again, that truth piece is, you need this, you don't need this other thing, right? Even though it might make, on paper, it might make me a lot of money, it's better that I create the solution for you that's best going to serve you. Right. So I think once they come to that place, and again, the themes over the years have been around, servant leadership, and these kinds of ideas. Like when you take that service mindset and you take care of your customers, that develops a deep, deep level of trust. And when you do this long enough, you get to do deals over and over again, right? You'll work with the same people. And when you already have that level of trust and you've actually delivered on the promise that you sold them, future deals and referrals and introductions and all of these other things get so much easier when you just do it right.
Amen. And that's Isaac. Maybe you can find the video from Inward to Outward Selling and put it in the chat. But that's a core principle of what we teach: is help others get what they want
Yeah.
and detach from the outcome. Show up in service, and it's refreshing to hear that, because that's what I've seen too with some of the heaviest hitters in this community, and that's what did it for me too. Is when I
Yeah.
started not trying to hit my number, but help other people hit theirs and figure
Yeah.
out
I
what
mean,
their number is.
a conversation I've been having a lot is the internal. So the bigger the deals that you're working on, the more and more time you're spending selling internally, right?
Mhm.
And so when I ask, big enterprise sellers what percentage of their time they're spending selling inside their own organization, it's more than half, right? It's like 60% of their time is that internal sell. And I think with that, there's a lot of pushing back that we have to do. My doing right by the customer is, I'm going to work towards their timeline. And frankly, the end of my month, the end of my quarter is irrelevant in that scenario, right? So some of that is having enough pipeline and being able to remove the pressure from yourself so that you can hold that line and you're not being asked to do unnatural things. But and it is so hard, right? It is, I mean, heck, sometimes this is coming down from the board. Like, we got to get this deal, we got to do this stuff. And I think it's one of those places like, look, it's just really not right. We get into such a trap in sales, trying to serve ourselves and working on our timelines.
Mm. I It's hard. I get
It's totally
that's
hard.
like one of the biggest questions we always get is like, well, our managers are asking us to sell differently. They're not taking the long road. They're trying to. There was an old motion at Salesforce. It was the biggest joke I've ever heard. It's called create and close, which is you create a pipeline, you close it in the same month. It was a create and close. It's like find the
Wow.
low hanging fruit. It didn't work. I just didn't
Right.
subscribe to it, but that was
Yep.
what they were pushing. So, tell me, you're doing some work. You just presented this at your summit around the it's called Scott's sales hierarchy of needs. I thought that was fascinating on our prep call. So maybe you can give some context on what that means and why it's relevant.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that's interesting for me each year is to really, as I build the program for the summit, really try and just figure out, like, what are the things that we are universally facing, right? What are the challenges that we're kind of having and sort of working through? And what I realized this year, and this has been kind of a culmination of a lot of what we've been working on over the years, and the recognition that what's funny is there's a little bit of a dichotomy, because a lot of people come to the summit because, like, I want the sales secrets, I want the tips, they want like this very sales centric type of stuff.
Mhm.
But the reality is there is foundational, fundamental stuff that if it's not in place, the sales techniques and strategies are irrelevant. So I modeled this four level structure off of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? So the four levels start with self, because I believe if your health and your mindset and your core relationships, right, like your family are not in place, the other stuff really doesn't matter as much, right? So self is that foundational layer. The next layer is situation. And I wanted to create sort of a space for us to take a step back and just consider our current role, right? The role that you're in, does it allow you to be very successful?
Mhm.
Right? Like, are you in the right role? Are you in the right market? Are you in the right territory? Are you in the right company? Because a lot of times, if you're just not in the right space,
Mhm.
it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to find success, right? And there's a lot of nuance to this, right? Like you might be in the right place for now, but maybe that doesn't scale, that doesn't work for the next year, right? So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different ways to kind of think about that. But I wanted to. I think we do not do a good enough job of looking at that bigger picture and in managing our careers kind of long term. So I always try and kind of create that opportunity to go, look, is this the right path? I mean, Ian, one of the things you and I've talked about very recently for the last, yeah, because I don't even want to do the math, a long, long time, I have considered and called myself an intentional individual contributor. Right. Like I have been offered leadership opportunities. I do not take them because I love being in the field. I love being in control of my schedule and all of these things. And as I've had kids and things like that, that has been really valuable. Well, my youngest daughter is a senior in high school. She's going to be moving on to college. And I'm looking up and going, you know what? I might be willing to take on that leadership role at this
Mhm.
point, right? Like this might be a good transition for me. But again, like you have to take that step back and just kind of look at the big picture of all of the things, right? What's happening in the market? What's happening with my expertise? What's happening with just my life stage, right? Kind of this recognition. I mean, we've been doing this having this summit and these conversations for a decade. So I've watched people go from, hey, I was single and I was crushing it, and now, I got engaged and I got married, and now I've got a young family, and like all of your situation. I mean, the situation was really meant to be more career oriented,
Yeah.
but your personal situation has a massive influence on how you treat those different things, right? So I wanted to be in much more control of my schedule so that I could be there for my family and kind of be around. Well, now I have like less family under my roof, and so that changes that dynamic. So self situation, the next layer is then sales. So yes, we did cover kind of some of the sales topic and some really interesting kind of approaches and things that again people are kind of finding to work in that area. And then the tip of the pyramid, and I like to think of the tip of the pyramid really being it's kind of a pole that goes all the way down through the pyramid, and that is style.
Mm.
So it really talks about that piece, that authenticity, that superpower, that are you being who you are, but that should permeate all the rest of the pyramid. Are you being who you are when you're selling? Are you being who you are in your situation and the way that you are um, behaving
Yeah.
inside your organization and the way that you collaborate with your peers and with your leadership and those that are kind of supporting your
It's kind of
opportunities.
like, are you using your gifts? Are you in your genius?
Totally.
Yeah.
100%. So it applies to everything, but the reason it really is a hierarchy is I do think they build on each other.
Can you just elaborate on the self part in the bottom? Like, why is that so foundational for everything
Yeah.
else? Why is that at the
Yeah.
bottom?
Well, and I think it's again like we want the sales strategies. But if you are not solid in your core habits and your routines and your health, right? I mean, I've always when I think about my own priorities, my health is above everything else
Mhm.
because if I don't have my health, right? If I'm sick or I'm laid up, I'm no good to my family. I'm no good in my job. Like nothing else works,
Mhm.
right? And so selling is the same way. And I mean, this is a kind of a horrible example, but I think the other one is, if you're in the middle of a divorce, you're not going to have a good sales year, right? So those relationships, just all of those things. And again, I think it's that opportunity to take a step back and make sure, am I taking care of myself?
Mhm.
Right? Am I in a good place? I guess some people would say this is like the put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you put it on other people. It's that, right? Like, let me make sure I'm good, and then I can be good and helpful and serve other people. But if I don't serve myself in that way and take care of myself, the rest is literally irrelevant.
I love it, man. I love it. We're gonna do a Q&A at about 1:45 for everyone. So if you have questions, get them ready. You can just raise your hand. There's a lot of good stuff I'm going to touch upon in a minute because one of the things I didn't know about you, Scott, is just your and you shared in our interview at the mastermind is like your sales abilities are through the roof. And you mentioned sales, assuming people have their health and they're in a good spot and they have a good opportunity at their company. Um, there are two things that you did really well, and I want to touch on both of them and lean deep into those. So the first you mentioned to me is I don't prospect in I don't cold call. I use
Mhm.
my network and I get referrals, and that makes it so that people want to meet with me immediately. And I think right now in the noise of like so many emails and sequences and AI stuff, like people don't even check their email anymore. I'm just curious what your approach is um, to generating these types of referrals. How do you go about it where you don't have to cold call?
Yeah. This is a personal superpower for me that I've always had in my career. I started my first company when I was 20 years old.
Mm,
And so the way I learned sales was I had to. You don't really have a company if you don't have clients. So I had to kind of figure that out.
mm,
And the way that I got there is I just got very involved in my local community and just did a lot. And the way that initially culminated, I sold that company 5 years later. When it was time to sell the company, I made 3 phone calls and
mm.
found the buyer. And there's a lot of steps between the between the phone calls and the closing, but that's kind of how that came together. And so I recognized that and always really leaned into it. And I've been in more or less the same industry for 15 years. And so the the experience that I've been able to develop like in this particular space with and largely working with I work in kind of the marketing technology space. So both that space working with marketers and doing it serving large enterprise clients
Mm,
has given me like a really, really powerful skill set. And the depth of relationships that I have across a very broad ecosystem. In fact, one of my favorite articles of all time, and this is so dated at this point, but I think it's still so relevant. There was a Harvard Business Review article years ago called Better Sales Networks. If you go to top1.fm / HBR for Harvard Business Review, it links right to this article.
mm,
And what's cool about it is it speaks to, I think typically when we think about our networks and their value and their power in sales, we think about this door opening piece. And yeah, that's an element, right? And it's one that I use a lot. I think it's primarily what you're referring to, Ian, which is again, if I see an organization that I've not worked with before or I'm not currently working with, it's just kind of a LinkedIn exercise, figuring out okay, who are the right people, and then it's okay, who knows them, and can I leverage some type of introduction, right? At the very least, I'll go super deep and figure out if I am going cold, I'm going to do everything I can to warm it up and make it very relevant. And so I'll be sharing kind of other stories from within their particular industry or other clients or other things that I think they might be dealing with. But by and large, it's sort of leveraging those. But the Harvard Business Review article said there's actually like 4 dynamics to the relationships and the way that you're leveraging them in deals. So opening doors is one of those, but there's also um, kind of validating and getting the credibility to close the deal. And so this is kind of the reference level stuff, right? So do you have relationships with other companies like them that you can point to and say, hey, don't believe what I say. I'm a sales guy. I'm just saying things, right? Let's validate this. Let me have you talk to one of my other clients that worked through this exact issue last year, right?
Mm,
And get their perspective, right? So you have kind of that reference piece. There's also a huge, and I feel like this is maybe the most untapped topic in sales today is the way that you're managing all of the internal relationships in your organization,
mm,
right? So to me, I actually see my job is wielding my organization and all of, and I work in professional services. So like this is even more true because I don't have a product. My product are these people, but it's how do I wield this organization and all of the power that it can provide on behalf of my client.
mm.
So how do I connect all of those dots and make all of those pieces kind of work together, right? So this those relationships that you have inside the organization, the way that you build trust there so that you can make sometimes very difficult asks of other people, right? When push comes to shove, or I do have a client on a really hard deadline that I need to get the organization to do things that might be a little bit uncomfortable. I have the ability to ask for those things. And I don't remember what the fourth dynamic is in the article. So there's something else.
I put it in the chat for everybody, but from a like a prospecting standpoint, are you using your leadership to open doors for you there, or is that more just in terms of getting executions and deals done that are
Yeah,
created?
so it's everything and everybody, right? So like I said, it starts with who's the right person, right? And or at least the right team. Like how do we get into conversation with this organization as close to the right level as we can? And
Mhm.
so sure, if that's my leadership or one of my consultants that's worked with them before, somebody inside the organization, awesome. If that is one of my other clients that has a relationship with them, if that is other kind of thought leaders in the space that I have a connection to that they're connected to. So whatever works. Ideally, what I'm trying to find is the deepest connection, right? So who do they know the best that they would likely have the most trust with? So if they've worked with somebody else before, like, oh, we worked at the same company for 3 years. Okay, they probably know each other. That's a path that I'll try and follow. Again, sometimes you're just sort of guessing at these things, but I always will ask before making that introduction because again it's different for everybody. It's for me in the earliest days of LinkedIn, I only connected with people that I knew because I wanted to be able to help other people with this, right? So that if you came to me and said, hey, Scott, can you introduce me to Ian? Sure, no problem. I know Ian. Over time, that got bastardized, and people were like, "Oh, Scott, you have a podcast. You need more of an audience." And so, I have a lot of connections now that I'm like, I don't know them. Maybe they know me. Maybe they listen to the podcast or something. So that doesn't work as well. But you just have to ask, right?
Mhm.
Like, do you know this person? Okay, how do you know them? Would you be willing to make an introduction? Here's what I'm trying to do, and I'm doing as much of that work for them as I can, right? I'm not going to ask them to draft the introduction. Like, here, if edit this if you want, but just tell them this. Copy, paste.
Yeah,
Here's Scott, right? How
make
do
it
how do I
easy.
make that really, really easy for the other person so it's not a big ask or a big
What
lift?
if they don't have a big network like you do? What
It
if like someone's
who?
like sellers on here where they don't have as many
Oh,
connections,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
what do you tell someone who maybe doesn't have that big sales network and they're trying to get in? What are some places for them to start?
For sure. So the best title of a networking book ever is Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty, right? So the idea is that you're building these relationships and paying and making deposits, right? You think of it almost like a bank account, right? Like I am building goodwill that in the future I'll be able to call upon, right? And again, I think that article will be helpful in broadening the aperture of who can you have relationships with,
Mhm.
right? You should really lean into the relationships inside your organization because they do two things, right? They help you work through deal cycles. They might be connected to somebody that you're trying to sell to, but from a career perspective, Those people know you. They know what you're capable of. They're going to go on to other interesting places. I think oftentimes that is the best, like, new job introduction kind of opportunity is people you've worked with previously. So really cultivating those relationships is really valuable. I also think that prospect knowledge is way, way, way more important than product knowledge.
Mhm.
Product is irrelevant if you don't know your customer. And so one of the things that you can do, especially if you're early career, but I do this all the I still do this. If I don't know an industry, an organization, a particular team, I'm constantly just asking for help to understand that, right? So I think this is actually easier to do early in your career when you are younger and just entering into these relationships with extreme curiosity, right? Like I'm trying to learn this space. I'm trying to learn what a day in the life is like for you. I'm trying to learn, what are the challenges that you're working through and all of these types of things without an agenda, right? This is not sales discovery. This is like lifestyle discovery, right? And it's an amazing way to build those relationships because it becomes kind of a mentoring relationship for them. They have an opportunity to kind of pay it forward and share their perspective and give something. It develops a ton of trust. And now you've got somebody who's potentially a champion inside the organization because, again, they're like, this person actually cares. They're actually interested. They're really looking for the things that are going to serve me or serve this organization. So now they can help introduce you within the organization, or maybe they have a peer, at another, prospect organization. So all of those things, it's just developing those relationships, right? And that happens one to one,
Hmm.
right? It doesn't happen on LinkedIn. It doesn't happen in posts. It kind of happens at conferences and things like that. Not really though, right? Like it has to be this one to one. Ian, you and I are learning from each other. I'm asking you questions, right? I'm learning to get that. That's the only way that really truly comes. And I think in many ways it's like a lost art. Like, how often do you have these deeper one-on-one conversations with your clients? There's been a number of like the most extreme examples. I wish I could remember specifically who. I'd point you to a particular podcast episode, but I've talked to a number of sellers who are maniacal about having a one-on-one conversation with every single person inside any of their deals.
Mhm.
Super powerful, super powerful, because nobody else is doing that.
Mhm.
And now they understand all of the dynamics that are going on, and you get people to open up and share things that they're not going to share in a group meeting or a Zoom or whatever else. Like, I'm not sharing this with my boss or my team on the line or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? But really getting to the core of that,
I,
it's one to one.
I remember the first time I ever did a consulting engagement. We had a group called Ignite in Salesforce where they would do a design thinking, and they said before we're going to do the design workshop, we need to meet with each of the C-suite leaders one on one to see what's important to them. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How are we
Yeah.
going to do that? He's like, well, we're not doing an Ignite if we do. So we had one on ones with the CEO, the CFO,
Yep.
the COO, CIO, CRO, like, and they all said different things. They
Yep.
all literally said what's important to them. And then we came in with such a broad perspective so
Yeah.
that the objections were minimal. We can address how it was helping each of these different leaders and their initiatives. So I love that. The second piece, besides just your networking and getting introductions, was your close rate. You mentioned you closed 75% of your deals, which is among the highest win rates I've ever heard of. And you said something that I don't work deals that I know I can't win. And that was when we did the interview. And I just want you to elaborate a little bit more on like how do you know if you can win a deal and what do you look for up front to decide whether you're going to invest your time, your resources in that particular opportunity.
Yeah, I think it comes down to two things. So one is just a lot of discovery, right? Just understanding as much as I can on the front end. Um, Again, that comes from that place of service and how do I take care of them, right? So as deep of just getting into not only the organizational situation, but kind of the personal situation as well. Like what's actually driving this and getting to the core of that is a really big piece of it. Then I'm kind of looking for action. right? If I'm pushing a rock up a hill, it's not a good deal. Like, how many times have we done that? Like, I really want this deal really bad, and you're doing all this work and all this unnatural thing, and they're not doing anything. Like, I'm I'm asking them to do stuff
Mhm.
because if they're not willing to do things in service of whatever it is that we're trying to solve together, the deal's not happening. Right. So it's a little bit of a, and I'm not explicit about this, but I'm sort of creating things to see, like, are you doing the work behind the scenes that we're going to do this? Like, if you're not willing to introduce me to, like, let's understand, like, what is your buying process and what are all of the pieces? Okay, cool. Well, in that, I'm going to need to start working with somebody on the MSA. We're going to need to start working with somebody on the security audit or whatever it is. If you're not going to introduce me to the people that lead those processes, that's a freaking problem.
Mhm. What about executives? Getting intro to executives.
And yeah, I mean that's
How
another.
early is that? Why is that critical? Just kind of talk us through that because that's a
Actually,
big.
here's one of my favorite things. And I this is one of those things I learned accidentally many years ago. Um, I leverage, I educate my clients about executive sponsors in a way that changes the game for me entirely. So my best executive sponsor, we're still friends. We talk every 2 weeks, even though he's basically well, he's not really retired. He was my most senior executive champion at 3M. I've worked with 3M for years and years and years, and he was the executive sponsor on a big project that we did with them. And he taught me, he said, look, Scott, my role in this executive sponsorship role is to call balls and strikes. He's like, my job is just to take in whatever information I need to so that we can make a decision. And he says, half the time the decision is going to be wrong. It doesn't matter. We just have to make a decision to keep the project moving. Otherwise, we get stuck and nothing happens.
Mhm.
I use that and tell that story so often, it's not even funny. And so the way it starts often is I'll be engaging on the deal and I'll ask the question, who's your executive sponsor for this project?
Mhm.
Most of the time, they don't have one.
Mhm.
Right. So this is where I start to differentiate and educate and say, look, if we're going to be successful, because this project goes across multiple division, multiple teams, multiple geographies, whatever it is, we're going to need somebody who sort of sits above that fray to help call these balls and strikes to keep us moving. Otherwise, we're going to get stuck and not be able to do this. So step one, again, I've educated. Now we work together to figure out who do you think that is? So now they're educating me on what their organizational structure is, right? Who kind of sits above but has some ownership or alignment across these teams. I'll also just ask about kind of personalities and other things. Then I will ask for that introduction, right? So now they're introducing me. This is where this may be one of the things that changes my win rates dramatically, is because while everybody else is farting around with, this director level where the deal is kind of happening, I'm one or two steps above, engaged with real power. I have them aligned. I'm building that trust because I'm showing them I know how to actually make this happen for you, right? They're not going to work with anybody else. They don't have the same level of kind of depth across the organization and all of these pieces, and it breaks through huge. And then I educate that executive sponsor, right? As we are meeting, I said, look, the reason I need your help with this is what we're trying to do. The span of control or the scope is this, and because it touches all of these things, I need somebody in your position just to keep us moving and to call these balls and strikes. And are you open to that? And would you be willing to support that? Right.
Mhm.
And now all the doors open and things really start to move because now I can leverage them in closing the deal also.
And how early does that happen in the sales cycle?
Pretty early because it's such a big differentiator.
Hmm.
Right. It's such a, because nobody else that they're talking to is asking that question. So it's one of those, like, wait, maybe this guy really knows what's going on and really knows how to make this happen. And the sooner I can be having those conversations and understanding the bigger picture and how this particular project fits into some higher level kind of strategic initiatives and things like that, like everything goes faster.
I think that's the one thing, if I could say anything, the one thing that um, is the common denominator between the $1 million earners and the consistent performers is they don't engage their team and go down this rabbit hole of evaluations and
Yeah,
projects until they have a meeting with an executive sponsor and understand the broader goals. And if that executive sponsor wants both teams working on the thing that their teams want to work on, because
yeah,
otherwise what happens is the teams go and do all this work and they take it up and then they find out it's not a priority or that they
totally,
have the money for it.
totally.
But if you get them early on, then they know it. They'll put the money because it's their idea, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that
And again, like there can be red flags. I mean, there have been plenty of times where I've gotten to that level and it's just like a political nightmare and there's no actual like institutional will to make this happen. I'm like, this isn't a real deal.
yeah,
Like this is a deal that these other jokers who are still competing for this in 12 to 18 months are going to get a no decision and I'm gone. Like I
yeah.
left a year ago. Have fun,
That's my
y'all.
point. That's my point. You really pressure test. You give them stuff that they need to do to see if it's
Right.
real. You make them ask for the executive sponsor, and if all these things and the executive sponsor cares about, and it's not the political landmines, like then okay, let's go. Let's
Yeah.
let's dive in.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so your time is
And I'm doing that in a way like I think this is another one of those areas where we get unnatural pressure to like, oh, you got to go higher. And what happens? How many people have been in the situation of like they're in this bad spot of they're going around their primary champion, their primary buyer, and they're trying to get to an executive level and they alienate that person in the middle. I'm partnering with them and we're finding that person and I'm trying to elevate their visibility and make them look good because it wasn't just me that had this idea. They recognized, hey, if we're going to really make this successful, we need a higher level champion to do this. And they're bringing the answer to that relationship. So I'm not shortcutting anybody. They're part of that process.
yeah. I love it, brother. We already have questions flooding in. I don't want to hog you, even though go on. I need to do long form like 2 hours like you do. Last question is what's just for 2026, what's next for you and where can people connect with you and learn about the summit and the podcast? And then we'll take some questions in the chat. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. So pretty much everything is at top1.fm. So TOP, the number one.fm. You'll find the podcast. You'll find the summit. Ian, I think you're not 100% commit. I've got Ian at like 90% coming back to the summit next year.
I would love
um,
to. We got to get the mastermind dates. Make sure we're not.
Yeah, we're gonna go big. Although my big is very intimate, right? So we'll go to about 150 folks this next year, celebrating the podcast. I'm actually going. I'm starting to go back to the beginning of time and do some kind of where are they now conversations. And I mean, there have been folks that have retired and done some really ridiculous things. So looking to bring a lot of them back. So yeah, if that's of interest, check out the details there. Feel free to send me a note. My email is scott at top1.fm. So if you want to just drop a note that way, that works too.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'll put Ashley on. Ashley as our first question in the chat. You can unmute mute yourself, Ashley, if you want to ask on that. That'd be great.
Yeah, thank you so much. You actually answered my question. It was about like where I'm finding I'm losing deals with these net new deals or these RFPs is where they don't give me C-level access. And so I'll get all the one-to-ones with like the VPs and the SVPs and whatnot, but I have no C-level alignment. And that's hands down why I've been losing this year in those scenarios. And so you broke it down with how you explain the project and like the role of the executive sponsor. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah. RFPs drive me freaking crazy, but that's another one where I won't respond. Right. What they want is for me to be column fodder or whatever else in their stupid process. If they won't give me access, if they won't let me have some conversations to really understand what's going on, I'm out.
Yeah,
Not going to play.
that's what I'm gonna start doing.
Yeah.
You don't want to waste your time. It's just like
No.
it doesn't you don't have enough time. It's our biggest asset. Stephanie Kern says a question along the same lines. What if you take this approach with your primary that we need an exec to call balls strike and they refuse? Go around or walk away?
It's a huge red flag for me. Right. So I'm probably walking away. Again, like you want to be multi-threaded in these conversations, right? So that shouldn't just be a one person kind of a thing. Like I want to sort of test that across multiple individuals depending on what's going on. But yeah, if you're not if you can't get access or you can't elevate to that level where again, it has to be impacting them. They're, even if it's their direct manager, they're going to be spending whatever amount of time on this project, like leading this initiative. They have to care to some degree. And if
Mhm.
there's not a willingness to open that door, there's probably not a there there. So I'm probably out.
Got it. I love it. Um, all right, Michelle, I'm just gonna let you guys come on camera and ask. It's just faster than reading the chat. So you can go ahead and ask your question. I'll put you on the spotlight. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, cool. Yeah, mine's a little long-winded, but I really heard, I've been writing notes as you've been chatting. This has been great. I love it. But you said something about like the in relationships with your internal org. And this is an area that I really struggle right now. I'm in an org where we're really focused on like improving our onboarding, and there's, some areas of the orgs that are moving really fast, and you have to be patient and let them like build and catch up and tweak their processes. But I wrote down like that you said like yielding your organization and all of the power that it can provide on behalf of your customer. And right now, I feel like what I struggle with is I'm a little bit critical. Like I'm not coming at it at the right angle. I'm not like empowering them and motivating them and, you know, positioning it in the right way so that the customer can get the best out of our team because no one feels good, obviously, if you're trying your best and you're being criticized. So can you just talk to me a little bit more about that, like how you're nurturing those relationships, how you are communicating more effectively with your teams and, showing them support when you're making some like big asks of them when like they're overwhelmed and doing their best too.
Yeah. So as much as possible, it's getting in front of it, right? And having those relationships beforehand. And I think one of the things you can do is sort of map organizationally what are all of the touch points across a deal that I might have, right? So customer success is probably one, finance is one, legal is one, maybe there's operations, maybe there's IT and security. And over time, as many of those relationships that you can have, but I think you can also start at the leadership level. And this is also um, when you first move into an organization, that is your opportunity to fast track this whole situation because you get to play the new person card. And so it's easier to kind of connect with all of these organizational leaders. And again, it's like it's just more discovery, right? Like what is your purview? What's how do you view these different things? What do you need help with? Who are the best sales professionals that you like working with the most? Why? Just getting into all of those people so that you know how to kind of work, push their buttons and serve them and give them the things that they want, right? Because some executives are like, I need context, right? Like I want a one pager that outlines like what is the deal, what are we trying to do. Okay, perfect, I want to know that. Like how do you want that information delivered, all of those types of things, because sometimes this might be something that's going to happen within their team, but if you have that leader's buy-in, they can sort of have somebody do the favor for you. So again, it's mapping it out as best you can, right? What are the most common touch points that you have in the course of your deals, getting in front of those relationships, building freaking one-to-one human relationships, right? Who are they? What do they care about? Like what are their buttons from a, are we about serving the customers? Are we about scaling? Like just what are the things that they care about that you can then kind of lean into and tap later when it kind of comes along, right? When you don't have that opportunity, right? It's more just in the game, which I know is a lot of what you're talking about. It's okay, who's going to be the team that's now serving this customer, taking care of this deal that I just closed. Um, and just again, like communicating with them as much as you can, right? Like maybe there's a big prep as we get ready to do the kickoff with that client, and you're briefing them and really bringing them up to speed and giving them all the context on here are the players, here's our executive sponsor, here's what they care about, right? Here's our main day-to-day person, this is what they care about, this is who they are. Just all of those little things that they probably don't get from anybody else, right? It's so much of this comes to communication.
Yeah.
right? And when you can share those details and get everybody on the same board and sort of aligned with the vision, like what are we trying to do? What are I tell this customer that we're going to deliver for them? Let's make sure that that's our North Star and not like this is our product, this is our process, this is a stupid stuff that we do. Like, okay, this is bigger than that. Yes, we're going to do those things, but there's a bigger sort of vision at play here, and our job together is to help execute on this vision on behalf of our client.
I love it.
Love that. Thank you.
Comprehensive. Morgan's asking about balls and strikes. Can you just repeat kind of the messaging? What do you say about balls and strikes that the why you need an exec sponsor?
Right. So Rob's message was my job is to call balls and strikes, meaning he's going to have imperfect information. So as you work through any project or any deal, you're going to come to inflection points, and a decision has to be made. That's the ball or strike call, right?
Mm,
So first, it's the recognition that we're not going to have complete information, and it's less about making even the right decision, right? We're not going to make perfect decisions every time, but we have to make a decision in order to keep moving forward. And
mm,
it's the moving forward that is the most important thing that everybody cares about.
mhm.
Right. And it takes a lot of pressure off of them. Like, don't worry, you don't even have to make the right decision. We'll work with you. We'll do the best we can. And
Yeah.
then the other thing that I'm lining up in this process is I'm going to set up an executive stakeholder cadence. Right. So depending on how in depth this is, maybe that's once a month, maybe it's once a quarter, maybe it's once a week, depending on how hot and heavy we are. And
Yeah.
I'm going to try and keep that as high level as I can. It's probably me, the executive sponsor, and their counterpart in my organization, right? That has kind of a higher level view of our thing, so that we can just focus on making those decisions and doing those things, and we just don't get mired in all the update minutia and all the other stuff with their other team, right? Like really having a process for this is when we have these higher level conversations. This is when we make those decisions. When we have to converse through them, and we can't make them on the fly.
I love it. And just keeping line of sight updates on where things are getting stalled, right? And it happened.
Totally.
I'm doing it with an AI BDR project that we're working on now. It's like I'm getting involved to remove the obstacles and keep things moving.
Totally.
So it
Totally.
makes
And
sense.
some of the time it's on their side, some of the time it's on our side, right? So I have to have kind of the leaders of both sides who can help us break through log jams. That's all it is. Like it's just keeping stuff from getting stuck.
Yep, yep. I have one last question. It looks like with the hierarchy, this will be our last one, Scott. With the hierarchy of self situation, sales, and style, how do you know if your current company is the right fit? You can look at what other people have done in similar roles, but what else do you believe are key determining factors to see if you're in the right situation?
Yeah. So what we did, I created a worksheet that we used for kind of each of these levels, and there were basically five areas, right, within each level. So as we're thinking about the situation, and I left them blank, right, because I think it's important that you define what are the most important things for you in your situation, right? And so just to give you some examples, right, this is. Um, call it kind of personal fit. Meaning, am I selling something that I'm excited about? Am I selling it to people I'm excited about selling to? It could be growth potential, right? Am I in a role where I'm growing, where I can do that within the organization, or maybe I'm growing to the next thing, right? Maybe I'm mid market now. I want to move in the direction of enterprise. Okay, but am I given the opportunity to grow
Hmm.
in my current situation so that I'll be able to take that next step at some point. So the criteria is really up to you, but the idea is taking that objective look, having your own criteria that's like, these are the five most important things for me. Maybe it's freedom, maybe it's control of your schedule, maybe it's compensation and benefits. Whatever those top things are for you, defining them, scoring against them, and now you've built your own score sheet that you can use 6 months from now and go, okay, is this improving? Is this getting worse? What is this? How do I objectively look at what my situation is?
Yeah, it's so interesting because compensation's a big one. Like I look at the comp plan, what's the potential? And I had someone yesterday who was I was coaching and she's like, can you show me some other comp plans compared to mine? And they weren't hers wasn't as good as some of the other ones,
Hmm.
but in her situation, I said, stay. You're crushing it. You have a great
Yep.
lifestyle, you have a great brand, and you're making $500,000. You don't need to leave. And you did it 1 year. Let's see if we can do it again. And then you can figure out, do I need more than 500,000? Like she had everything going for
Yep.
her. So
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
that's like a
Oh, and
situational
just
thing.
be if compensation is your number one, you're doing it wrong. Like there are so many more things that are more important. That is a trap. Everybody I've ever known that has gone after this is the biggest thing. That's when you learn the hard way about faux TE, right? Like on paper, I'm going to make all this money. Bullshit. It's either not real or you got to sell your soul to get there, and it's not worth it.
Yeah, because it's like you're 300K at that startup or whatever, or 350, like when you're selling a 30K product that can't go to
Right.
enterprise, you're not going to make your 300K with a
Yeah.
$1.5 million quota. So that makes a lot of sense. Scott, do you have a hard stop right now? I want to be
I'm good.
mindful.
I'm all
I
yours.
just had one last question for you. And you said the personal side, like when you're qualifying, you want to know like why their company needs to do this and then why they need to do it personally. Can you
Yeah.
just elaborate a little bit more on like the personal motivation piece? Because I think that's something people don't touch on and talk about. And I think it's really important.
Yeah. So, in some ways, this is almost like helping somebody explore their own situation.
Mhm.
Right. So I think a lot of this is just kind of asking questions, and you can go into this with hell, it's not very different than developing a hypothesis and a point of view on a deal. You can do this with a person, right? So looking at their LinkedIn profile, looking at their background, sort of looking at the professional trajectory that they're on, right? This is very different if you're talking to somebody that's been at a different company every 3 years and has been, moving role to role and doing this different things versus they've been at the same company for 20 years, and they haven't had a title change in 5 years, right? So just leading with curiosity and understanding like just where are you in this, like how does this serve you, how does this particular project or whatever it is connect to your day-to-day responsibilities, the way that you're viewed, the way your next performance review looks like, does this have an impact on that?
Mhm.
Really just asking those questions, because if you can tap into um, this relates to my compensation in form of a bonus or something else from that perspective, good. Better is this impacts my visibility in the organization, my opportunity to move to another role. It might be, again, if you're doing a good job with this, they might tell you, you know what, I'm probably only here for another 6 months. I'm trying to position for, a move to another organization. Just understanding all of those pieces, having that depth of relationship and having them again have that level of trust and openness,
Mhm.
and with that, that's a give and take, right? Like I'm stupefyingly open and honest with my clients about what's going on with me, with my organization, with different things, and a lot of times that will kind of help them open up in those ways. And again, it's caring about humans. I mean, there's nothing like magical or secret about this. It's just I'm super curious. How does this connect to you? Where are you going? Where are you at from a family lifestyle, personal situation, everything else, right? You won't always get it. Like there's a lot of people that are fairly guarded, and you don't get those details. But as much as you can,
Yeah.
it's super helpful. And at the end of the day, I'm just trying to help you. And the more context and information I have about that, the better I am to able to serve you.
People won't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So
Amen.
like and you show people you care by listening, by being present, by doing what you say you're going to do, by
Yep.
thinking about them and sending them little things and showing going above and beyond what other people are doing. And that's what separates us from the robots. And I think it's going to be more important than ever. Scott, we're over. We got to wrap, but I just want to say thank you for um, being here. Thanks for your friendship and thanks for all you do for the sales community. And you're doing such a service for so many people. And I would be honored, to join you and we'll figure out how we make it work. And I'll bring some of our clients on along for the ride too. So, thanks so much,
My
brother.
pleasure. Happy to do it. Thanks for
All right,
having me.
all right, everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye bye.
Bye now.